So let me open with a story, and then we'll delve into the topic at hand. The story is about a little girl who was in synagogue, and she was just bawling, and she was crying, and she was uncontrollably. So the rabbi goes up to the girl and says, "What's wrong? Why are you crying? Why are you so upset?" And the girl says to the rabbi, "Because I was playing a game of hide and seek. And I was hiding, and at first I thought, wow, I must have a great spot. Nobody can find me. But then it got longer and longer and longer, and then I realized nobody was looking for me. And maybe nobody cares. Nobody was looking for me, my friends were looking, my parents were looking at me, they just left me there hiding." And the rabbi comforted, as all good rabbis do, and said, "Of course your parents love you and your friends care for you." But then the rabbi thought, after he consoled and comforted the girl and made her feel comfortable, he said, "Aha, now I understand how God feels. During this time of year, God makes himself accessible to us." That's what we're told, starting with the month of Elul, and especially during this time. You might have heard this term, Hamelch Basadeh, the king is in the field. God is in the field. Where is the king normally? Hiding in the palace. This time of year, God is in the field. But God is in the field, and why? Not enough people are looking for him. And the rabbi said, this is the challenge of the month of Elul. God is there, but are we looking? And that's what I hope to talk about a little bit today. How we can look, but not as individuals. Because my talk today is looking as a community and searching for God and doing Teshuva as a community is much more powerful than doing it as an individual. Teshuva, yes, there's an element of what we call cheshbon nefesh and introspection and looking at ourselves, but we can't do that alone. It needs to be in the context of community. That's what's very special for me to be here with you, the beautiful community that you're continuing to build together, because it's with the strength of community that we can do Teshuva, that we can search for God. All alone, it's scary, but when I link arms, figuratively, there's a lot more we can accomplish. So what I'm going to do is share with you a few texts, a few ideas relating to the unique power of community in doing Teshuva and making sure that when God is playing the game, making himself accessible, that we are looking and searching. So let me pass around these texts.
Okay, you want to pass around?
Okay, I'm going to pass it around.
Yeah, hold on.
No,
Hey, what's going on? One more.
One more? Okay.
Anybody have one?
Everybody good? Okay. So let's look at text 1. I probably will not do all of these. The Rambam, so this is the Rambam. The Rambam is Maimonides. The Rambam's mother never called him Rambam. Okay? It's an acronym for Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Just like Rashi's mother, guess what? Never called him Rashi. Okay? The Rambam wrote, in one of his halachic works, he wrote the Laws of Teshuva, and it's actually interesting. Anybody know how many chapters are in his Laws of Teshuva? Want to take a guess? 10. So it's actually very appropriate. It's not the custom to study a chapter a day during this time period, but on the 10th day in Yom Kippur to read the last chapter. So he says in the second chapter, law number 6 of his Laws of Repentance, I'm going to read it in the Hebrew and translate. Is that okay? Afal pi, she'atshuva ve'atzaka yafel olam. Teshuva really works all year round. It's not only for this time. We focus on this time. But it's really all year that we can do Teshuva. We can repent and call out to God. Ba'asara hayamim shebein Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim hiyafe biyoter. During these 10 days between and including Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the period we're in now, yafe biyoter. It's even better. It's even more efficacious, I would say. Umitkabelet hi miyad. It's received immediately. Implication is, Teshuva during the rest of the year is not received as readily. Okay, but here it's received miyad. Shene'emar. Where do we know this? as it says in Isaiah, Dirshu Hashem bimatzau, search out God when God can be found. Okay? This is actually the Haftarah we recite on fast days. Search out God when He can be found. Maimonides continues, B'med Dvarim Amurim, when is it? When are we talking about? When you say search out God when God can be found. When can God be found? I'm sorry. B'med Dvarim Amurim B'yachid. When can God be found? God can be found during this time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So search out when God can be found. B'med Dvarim Amurim, when are we talking about B'yachid as an individual? That this works better during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Aval Tzibur. But if a community comes together in repentance and doing tshuva, Kol Zman She'osin Tshuva, anytime that you do tshuva, Vitzoakin B'lev Shalem, and you call out with a full heart, Heim Ne'anim, they are answered, Shenemar Kashem Elkeinu B'Korei L'Nei. God hears us when we as a communal element call out to God. So what we see from Maimonides is this is a very special time that even the individual is answered. But if you have a community coming together, they're always answered. So you can only imagine a community coming together on the Aseret Yimei Tshuva is certainly the highest level. Okay. I just want to the next Rambam I want to do very quickly, just to show you how the original tshuva, as it existed in the Beit HaMikdash, and this Yom Kippur service was really something that was done very communally oriented. It was not go to the hilltop and bury yourself in your hands and repent. There might be some time for personal introspection, but its core on Yom Kippur is we want you to be where? Community, in shul. Okay? And the first explanation of that, just quickly, is the Sir HaMishtaleach. You know, the Yom Kippur service in the temple, part of it was the scapegoat, you might have heard of. So they sent the scapegoat. The role of the scapegoat, I'm not going to get into all the details, but if you see it, Kapara al Kol Yisrael, what did this bring? It brought atonement for all of Israel. Okay? So the Kohen Gadol mitzvadeh alav, the Kohen Gadol will pass upon it, al lashon Kol Yisrael. You see how inclusive it is. Everything was even taught for all of Israel. Shenemar, mitzvah alav, alav, kol avonot b'nei Yisrael. Okay? So, once again, you have the temple, which is really, when Yom Kippur was celebrated in the temple, it was primarily also communally oriented. Okay? So these are just two texts that start presenting this idea that there's a certain power in community. What I want to do now, and feel free to ask questions, interrupt, and challenge, whatever, okay? I hope not just to be frontal. I want to show you, if you turn to the next page, that this idea of community has what we call practical halachic ramifications. It's not just in theory, but practically, it plays out in certain ways practically that as a community, we can do things that we would not otherwise be able to do as individuals. So I'm going to give you like 3 examples. The first example is, as we notice, during this time of year, what do we do in the Shemona Esrei? What are some of the things we do? What do we do differently? Right, we have insertions.
Right.
We have special insertions. Zachreinu l'chaim, remember us for life, the kadveinu b'sefer ha'chaim. We insert that.
We have Hamelech HaKadosh.
We insert Hamelech HaKadosh instead of Hakel HaKadosh. God is not just God is more the holy God. Holy King is more present. God is acting as king. Okay, and then we have 4 additions. We have 4 additions of phrases. 1 in the first paragraph of the Shemona Esrei, first blessing. Another in the second. And then we have a third insertion in the next to last paragraph of the Shemona Esrei, and then a 4th one in the final. Okay, and then we change 2 verses to end the blessings from Hakel to Hamelech. There's only one problem. The problem, it says, as we're going to soon see, the Talmud tells us you're not allowed to make insertions in either the first 3 blessings or the last 3 blessings. So here we are, okay? The Talmud says you're not allowed to. And look in your Siddur, and what does it say? Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, please insert this. So you might say, well, who's the Talmud to say you can't? The Siddur says you can. What's the answer to that?
Talmud came first.
Talmud came first. Okay, the Talmud set the law. So how did the Siddur evolve that somebody did something that the Talmud said you're not allowed to do? Okay? Yeah, and if a prayer leader would get up and skip it,
Go back.
so everybody,
Yeah.
but those you don't have to go back. But everybody yelling at the person. Can you imagine the person saying, "No, I'm going according to the Talmud"? They say you're crazy.
You gotta go according to the art scroll.
Rabbi art school, right? And there's not this. Okay, so it's very interesting. So this is going to be the struggle. So in text too, this is what it says. I'll read it in English. This one: a person should never petition for his requirements, either in the first 3 benedictions or the last 3. Okay, but in the middle ones, if you want to add to the Amidah, you're allowed to add. But what's the rule? Where do you add? In the middle ones. Where can you not add in the first 3? Why? It's compared to a servant who is facing his master. That's the beginning. First, I need to praise my master. In the middle, it's compared to a servant who is requesting something from his master. And the third is a person who received from his master and is asking to leave. So, meaning, the role of the middle is to what? Ask. But what is the role of the first is to praise, and the role of the last is to thank. What is the big no-no? Asking before I should be asking. Okay, so it says you can't do that. First I need to give her praise. I can't just start asking, I can't jump the gun here. And when I'm supposed to be saying thank you, I can't say, can I ask for 2 more things? Not appropriate. So all the commentators in the Talmud, and that's 3, 4, and 5, and I'll do those outside. They all ask this question and they say, but I don't get it. Our common practice is not this way, okay? Because we do have these insertions. So our Siddur is saying this, and this is our practice, and the Talmud is saying that. Now, how would the holy rabbis do something against the Talmud? So the answer of most of the authorities is basically the same. When it comes to an individual, you don't have the chutzpah to break those rules. But if it's a need of the tzibur, if it's a need of the community, it is such great magnitude when I'm not just asking for me, right? Notice the language. Zachrenu lechayim. Right? What's the language? Right? Remember us for life and kadvenu b'sefer hachayim. And do what? Write us. That's a demand. Remember us for life and write us in the book of life. And if it was just as an individual, we need to have a little more deference. So we'll say that you can say it even as an individual because you're saying it on behalf of everyone. Because it's Sarche Rabim, it's the needs of everybody. But you're not saying remember me.
Right.
You couldn't say remember me for write me in the book of life.
So pretty much I'm praying for all the community, even not with me right now.
Right. So ideally, of course, it's within the. But even if I'm not, if I'm just asking for me, I couldn't do it. Zachrenu l'chaim melchavetz b'chaim katveinu. Okay. So that's how. So this is Tosfot and the Rabbeinu Asher who come like 600-700 years after the writing of the Talmud, and they're looking around and they're saying, but hey, we have this, you're not supposed to do this. They say if it's the need of the community, there's a strength of the need of the community that I couldn't do for myself.
And that goes back to the first thing we were talking about.
Right. This is right. So the first was really in theoretical terms.
Yeah.
God is around for the community. I'm showing how it actually plays out in halachic literature, in law, in Jewish law, that this has implications. The community allows me to do something that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. Okay, if you think of it, it kind of makes sense. If I'm an individual and I'm in front of the king, how dare I make my request earlier on than I should have? But if I come with the masses, right?
I think
God has to take more notice to however that we understand it.
what you have bolded in number 4
Yeah,
is also
sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
The color you were out of.
Ah, okay, good. Right, so the Rabbeinu Asher adds another word than Tosfos. It's not just the need, the kavod hu l'rav, meaning instead of an act of disrespect, but the fact that you're coming in the multitudes praying in front of God gives God honor, so it takes away what it would have otherwise been the disrespect, because it's an honor that you're coming in the multitudes. Right, it adds it's not just removes the negatives, it actually adds a positive. Very good, very good. Okay. So that's one practical way this plays out. I want to show you another, in the second box where it starts with 6, another practical way this plays out. And it's only in the Hebrew, but I'll translate for you. Tab number 6. Lo yitbalel biyachid tfilat musaf b'rosh Hashanah ad achar gimel sha'ot hayom. A person should not daven musaf on Rosh Hashanah until after 3 hours of the day. What time do you guys start here? 9. By the time you got to musaf, you're well past the first 3 hours of the day. The 3 hours of the day is from sunset.
That's by the time we
Right.
were.
From sunset, from sunrise, yes. You were, by the time you hit musaf,
Yeah.
probably 11:30ish.
Right.
I can tell you exactly what time we do Musaf, because that's what time the Millers get there.
Okay. What time's musaf?
It's usually about
Yeah,
10:30.
we're not
That's fast. You get to
No, Rosh Hashanah, I'm sure it's even later.
Rosh Hashanah? I'm talking about Rosh Hashanah.
We're still doing
No. Right, okay, Rosh Hashanah, right, you're almost
maybe it's
midday.
closer till
Okay.
11.
It's closer to 11.
So in case you wanted to go to some super early minyan and get up really early, it says, but musaf should not be in the first 3 hours of the day. Actually, we're going to say in a second. Why? Because it's in the first 3 hours of the day that God judges. And when do you want to be praying to God at a time of mercy? That's the strictest time of judgment. So what do we say? That's only as an individual. But if you're out as a community, we have nothing to be scared of.
We can blend.
You can blend. There's no fear. You're going to see this idea play out. That this fear and judgment that exists dissipates when I'm not alone. When am I not alone? When I'm in my community. Okay? You had a question? I'm sorry. Yes.
No, I was, you answered it, it's fine.
I do know.
Yes, okay?
So you say you come as a community, so pretty much we're going to fear because we come together. But in different world, pretty much we are, as a community, we're breaking the law. We tend to pray in the morning, okay, on the time that we're supposed to pray. We pray all of us together 4 hours ahead, later.
Right. All I'm saying, in theory, if this whole halacha that says you shouldn't do the first 3 hours is irrelevant if you are with a tzibur, with a community.
Okay.
So it doesn't apply anyway because most shuls don't do the first. But we would say it doesn't matter because you're with the community.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It says this idea you shouldn't do it. Oh, but if your community doesn't apply. Okay, I'm just showing how this actually plays out in like real terms. The third area that I want to share with you, and that is on the next page. And this is this. If you look at text 8, so this is the source for what you will be hearing over and over during Kol Nidre and the Ila. I don't know if you have Slichot here, but this is the 13 attributes. This is actually a beautiful text. Let me share it with you. It says, Vayavor Hashem al panav v'yikra, that after the sin of the golden calf, God passed in front of Moses and he taught him. Amar Rabbi Yochanan taught, Yomale mikra katuv efshar la'omra. When you get it, so which means, if the Torah didn't write this, it would be impossible to say it. When you get a Talmud saying like that, it's grab on, fasten your seatbelts, hold on tight, because it's going to be real good. It's basically the rabbi saying, we would never say it, but the Torah said it, so I guess it's okay to say. Okay? That's what he's saying. So this is going to be something good. Okay? Milamed, what is this teaching you? That God wrapped himself like a prayer leader with a talit. And he taught Moshe this order of prayer. Amar lo, and he said to him, Kol zman sheYisrael chotin, any time in Israel sin, ya'aseh lefanai kaseder hazeh. Read these attributes, v'ani mochel lahem, and I will forgive them. These are Hashem, kel rachum v'chanun erech hapayim rav chesed v'emet. Okay, so he says, God almost dressed up like a prayer leader and said, "This is what when you mess up, this is what you need to do." But the language is interesting, like a shliach tzibor. The term shliach tzibor is the term that we use for the chazan, for the leader. When do you have a shliach tzibor? When there's a minyan. Which is interesting, it's fascinating, because the shliach tzibor, the first time there was clearly no minyan. Right? I mean, it was Hashem and Moshe. But he said, this is what I need you to do. Yasu lefanai keseder hazeh, and many of the halachic authorities, therefore, say, these 13 attributes with their power, they can only be said in a minyan. The most powerful, the quote-unquote secret of the 13, as they're called, the God's secret that revealed to us to help us get forgiveness, according to most halachic authorities, can only be done in a tzibur. That powerful tool needs the context of the tzibur. So I just share with you 3 interesting practical ways relating to the community. One, I'm now blanking on it. One was, if you can remind me, one was, right, the additions, that we're able to make additions in the first 3. The second element was, right, that you can pray Musaf before the first 3 hours in the community. And the third was the 13 attributes. So let's look at Rabbi Soloveitchik here at number 13. And he, in an article, he wrote The Individual in the Community. Anybody want to read that for us? Any volunteers? 13?
13.
I don't have page numbers.
Oh, it's in English.
It's in English, yes.
You were gonna do the Hebrew.
Okay, I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Someone else will read.
The difference between individual and communal confession is tremendous. When the individual confesses, he does so from a state of insecurity, depression, and despair in the wake of sin. For what assurance has he that he will be acquitted of his sins? And who can promise him that his transgressions will be forgotten and will not haunt him till the end of his days? In contrast, Knesset Israel,
Which means the community of Israel, right? Okay.
and each and every Jewish community is considered to be a microcosm of the whole Knesset Israel, confesses out of a sense of confidence and even rejoicing, for it does so in the presence of a loyal ally before its most beloved one. In fact, in certain Jewish communities, I myself heard this in Germany, it is customary for the whole congregation to sing Al Chet confession in the heartwarming melodies. The individual does not sing Al Chet, he weeps. Not so the community, because it does not come to plead for atonement, it claims it as its right.
So I every time I read this, I just think it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable because the contrast, the al chet, which is the confession when we feel bad about all that we've done. So if you ask me, what's your emotional state for that? It's weeping. It's I've failed, and he says, yeah, but there's 2 times we do al chets for each service. One, we do it in the private Shemona Esrei as individuals, In that, as he says, we weep and we feel bad and we're insecure and we're depressed and we're upset, But when we repeat it as the community, he even says there's a custom to sing it. Because I love his last line. We're not pleading, this is our right. With the community, we're going to get atonement. The strength of the community is, I'm going to be okay, we're going to be okay. God, you've made promises to, as me as an individual, I'm nervous. But now that I'm with everybody else, I'm not nervous anymore. I know, God, you will forgive your community. Amazing idea. And the idea of from crying to singing, I just find this very powerful.
That just doesn't work if it's 1944 and you're from Hungary and you're in a camp and you're in a community in Treblinka.
So,
How does that work?
I don't have any answers to the Shoah. And anybody who does the answers to the Shoah, I usually tell people to run away from, because I don't know. This is,
We'll find out when Mashiach gets here.
I don't know. I just don't know. But this is getting atonement for God. This is not about punishment per se.
Well, it's what it is. I mean, you know, the classic Orthodox line is, you know, there was this, people, you know, that do want to posit why it happened, talk about the, what do you call it? Haskalah and all that, and we pay for our sins. And those people
you're talking to the wrong Orthodox rabbi.
I'm just saying.
I don't ascribe to that.
So you could, those people that think that, or they're doing Hashamnu for that, or Al-Khaib for that. So it didn't work. I mean, it may have worked. Yeah, I guess they got eternal life, but
I don't know. I can't.
Well, but see, the problem is when you say you don't know, you just can't blank out on it. It's a cop out.
Well, we also took a whole class on answering prayers,
Right.
and we at the weekend at Limud,
Right.
and there is no answer to those things. A lot of that I took away from that class, a wonderful things that were not.
Right. So
We're not
I
supposed to
will
have
tell you,
answers
you may
to
not find it
something.
satisfying. I'm very comfortable with the answer I don't know.
Mhm.
Because if I knew,
I know you don't know. I don't know.
if I
either,
knew,
but theologically,
if I knew
it's
the
just
ways
a-
of God, then
it's just
God
a
would
hard-
not be God.
It's just a hard thing that you know. I've always had a major hang up on that. I mean, even though I do it and I go through the motions and I do all this stuff,
Mhm.
you know, I try to say I'm sorry all year.
Right.
But you know, to sit there and go, okay, I'm super sorry for these 10 days, and
Right.
come on, Sneela, hurry up! It just doesn't really work for me. I mean, I do it, but I mean,
You'll
just
do it again next year.
But that-
and I've done it every year, but psychologically, it
Right.
just doesn't work.
But for me, that's when it's not just about me, but it's about us. And I think that's what he's adding here. There's something more powerful. It's not just about. It's I'm standing for something greater. I'm standing with the Jewish people. And I love also his word. What does he call any congregation? You notice that term? You should underline it, right? Is a microcosm of the Jewish people as a whole. When you're here as the Kihila, you're not just your members. You're a microcosm of Jewish peoplehood. And the Rabbi Soloveitchik says in other places, not only present, past, present, and future. You're representing Jewish peoplehood and our relationship with God. And that's not just I did that mistake and I did this and that. It's the Jewish people coming for God and say, we want to be better, we want to do better. Why this happened? I think there's a difference between asking questions of why and what. The whys, sometimes you have to live with the unanswered whys.
Yeah,
But
I
the
know,
what's,
I know.
we have.
Well,
Go ahead, yeah.
when you talk about doing tshuva as a community and the community asking for tshuva, right? So the Jewish people are in the Beis Hamikdash, or they're all in the shul. What you can ask for tshuva for the whole community, but when you ask for tshuva for yourself, you're committing to make changes. You're working on yourself. It's about personal growth.
Right.
What does that mean for the individual when doing tshuva as a community?
So what,
Is that-
yes, I think if I understand correctly. So first of all, yes, I think there's the communal element in general, but I think as an individual, if you're doing tshuva just by yourself, it's very lonely. And I think it's scary. It's
like, so when I'm in shul and we're all doing tshuva together, what is my role in that? Do I just stand there and say Hashem Hashem Kel Rachum, or like, because I have a very active role in my personal tshuva, so what is my role in communal tshuva?
So what is my role? I think it's recognizing we're part of something greater. It's about recognizing that it's not necessarily that I have responsibility to the greater good. That I'm not operating in an isolated island. But I think the communal tshuva helps your personal tshuva.
Can it be a dual role at the same time?
Because I'm not alone anymore.
Right.
And when I'm working to become better, it's not just for me.
Mm-hmm.
It affects this collective. So yes, working yourself as an individual does affect the collective, but you might not be aware of that unless you come together in community. Is that?
I guess I'm trying to figure out when I'm in the community and I'm doing tshuva, what am I doing? Is, I guess, because you have the Jews in the temple, and they all go and they there's the service and they bow at the right time, so
Right.
they send out the scapegoat, and then you go back to your village and you take out your idols. Like, what have we accomplished? So the question is, what is the community doing as a whole, as a collection of individuals? What are those individuals doing other than bowing at the right moments and watching the scapegoat?
So maybe communal, starting as this community, what can this community do better? What can other communities do better? What can we do to make sure there's less infighting amongst Jewish people? What? Nobody can change the world in an instant.
Right.
But we need to take responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for our community as well.
Just thinking maybe
Yeah.
start being nullified to the community as itself a major tshuva. Just being in amongst other people, hard to explain, but that itself could be the tshuva.
Okay. Connecting to this Knesset Yisrael idea in general. Okay. Okay. So I want to take this one step further, and I want to show how this idea of the community is more than just a collaboration of parts that happen to be together, but they were actually one entity. And I'll show that through a fascinating halachic discussion, which many of you counter regularly, right? When somebody on Friday night or Shabbos day, right? How do you begin the meal? With? Shalom Aleichem, this and that, and then, what's the most important thing? Kiddush.
Okay.
So who makes Kiddush?
Somebody else fixed it.
So- Does everybody around the table make Kiddush? No.
Ball back.
Does everybody around the table have an obligation to make Kiddush?
Yes.
To hear.
To hear, participate.
Everybody has an obligation to pay.
Everybody has an obligation to say Kiddush. Both men and women, an equal obligation. Not to hear, but to say Kiddush. Okay? So if everybody has an obligation to say Kiddush, isn't it strange that not everybody says Kiddush? Take the shofar. What's the obligation relating to the shofar?
To hear it.
To hear the sound of the shofar. Okay? So that one actually is. It's to hear the sound of the shofar, but if I hear the sound of the shofar by an artificial blowing, am I fulfill it needs to come from a person.
Mikra Megillah.
Can't hear it on the radio.
Mikra Megillah. There's an obligation to
Read.
read the Megillah. That's also another good example that's obligatory upon men and women. How many people read the Megillah?
We all read it.
Are you reading it?
Yeah.
You're reading it
In
audibly?
English?
Obviously, but you're reading it.
Okay, but reading in Hebrew, and reading in the right, we would never say reading your prayers. You can just scan it with your eye.
You're supposed to say it.
So we have this concept that if I hear and I have intention to fulfill my obligation, it's as if I said it myself.
Like Kiddush.
Like Kiddush. I have an obligation to say Kiddush. Nevertheless, you were the one who recited it. By listening and saying Amen afterwards, and having in mind that I want to fulfill my obligation through you, it's as if I said Kiddush. Okay? There's this certain power that we can link in, that an individual is doing. Everybody else can link into that. So I have an obligation to read the Megillah. Read the Megillah is articulating it, the words. Following along is not articulating the words. But if I listen, it's as if I'm the one standing up there reading.
Same thing with beer cut. Same thing with beer cut.
Same thing technically. We don't do that practically.
Well,
but
because somebody
technically,
doesn't know how to do it.
correct. In the old days,
In the old
actually.
days, when we used to, I studied with rabbis, I mean, we'd sit there with some guys and they didn't know Hebrew and they would just listen.
Right.
And then he said, yeah, what's the word?
Yes,
It's
yes.
Yosef.
The Yotze, right. In the old days, actually, used to be one person reading Birkat HaMazon.
Right, right.
And everybody would just listen. Now everybody does it. But it's the same principle. Okay? Yes.
I'm halakhically confused.
Okay?
Because I thought that I thought for sure women don't have to drink grape juice, at least on Shabbos day. If you don't have to drink it, then how would you be obligated to say
So
it?
women are, let's take Friday night, that's the clearest. Absolutely. Women are obligated equally as men on all the positive commandments of Shabbat.
But I thought, but like,
And the
how-
negatives.
How would you have? I thought you had to hear it, because how can you and say Amen? Because you have to. If the obligation is you have to say it, and you're Yotze on hearing it, if you have to say it. That means you also have to have some wine or grape juice, right?
Right. So
How could you say
you,
it without-
you can hear it, and even the drinking by that person,
Oh, you're Yotze on the
you
truth.
don't need to drink at Kiddush.
Okay.
You can still have whatever that person, it's the custom to do that, but that's not, there's no difference between men and women here, okay? That person who said it, they did it on your behalf.
And they drink on your behalf too.
What?
And they drink on your behalf
Yeah.
also.
So the question is, why does this work?
I never did get that.
Okay, there you go. Aren't you glad I can? Right? So how does this work? You're telling me I have an obligation to read it. I didn't say a word. But I listened, and it's as if I did. It's as if I read the whole Megillah. Okay? Yeah.
Sorry if this is weird. I heard something today, they were talking about it. It's like somebody's in one part of the world on his computer giving
Mm-hmm.
a lecture, and then it comes up on the other person's computer. So if like he's got the intention of communicating it to the other person's receiving device, and they've got the receiving device ready to receive it, that there's a connection in that.
Okay.
I don't know if that's
And that's
Okay.
why, and that's
Does
why
that
we're
work?
allowed to do it.
that's how it works. Like, and we
I
don't
mean,
really-
it's
In modern times. that's
it's a
how it
halachic concept. But I'm gonna actually extend this a step further. I'm gonna stretch it. I'm gonna stretch it with a very practical case. I went to shul and heard the shofar blown 100 times on Rosh Hashanah. So, what's my relationship to the mitzvah of shofar? I heard 100 times. I'm good for the day, right?
Yeah.
Okay? Now I heard about so-and-so, Mr. Smith down the street. Let's pick up a more Jewish name, right?
Cohen.
But
Smithstein.
Mr. Smithstein down the street, okay, who is homebound, couldn't make it to shul. What does Mr. Smithstein, I've never heard of such, okay, what does Mr. Smithstein, what can I help Mr. Smithstein do?
Go blow the shofar for him.
Go blow the shofar for him. That's what it was a wonderful mitzvah. But there's only one problem. The idea works in general as you have an obligation to, let's take the Kiddush case. You have an obligation for Kiddush, and I have an obligation for Kiddush. We're both in the same boat, that we're both obligated. So we're like equals, right? So I can say it, and you can listen, and you can fulfill. But this case, I'm already done. I blew my shofar. I'm no longer obligated to hear the mitzvah, to hear a shofar anymore. I did it. Finished. Wait till next year, right? How can I do this for another person when I'm no longer obligated? The general rule is We're both obligated.
Blow the shofar.
And that's the reason in certain commandments, a woman can't fulfill, there's Kiddush is not the case. Megillah, Shofar actually would be example the opposite. A woman can't roll for a man because there are different levels of obligation. But here, I already fulfilled, I'm done. How can I do it for this person? Okay? So, this is, and we say, nevertheless you can. So they all struggle, the commentaries struggle. And if you look at 15 here, why is it if I've already fulfilled? This is even an extension of how can I, if I'm not saying it, how does it work? So number 15, Rashi says, beautifully, Sharei kol Yisrael arevim zeh bazeh lemitzvot. All of Israel are guarantors for one another for mitzvot. Meaning,
Where were you reading it?
so is it 15? It's only in the English. I'm sorry.
It's only in Hebrew.
In the
You
Hebrew.
get
I wasn't
pretty much
following
to help to someone to do the mitzvah.
Right, what's a guarantor
So
mean?
we started up here.
If you don't pay,
If you don't gonna do it,
that
you don't
person
gonna
pay,
do
you
it.
have to
I was
pay.
looking
Right.
down here.
So even though I'm done, I'm your guarantor. And since I'm your guarantor for another Jew, every Jew is a guarantor for another Jew. So the fact that you have not yet fulfilled your mitzvah, I'm still not done. Because I'm still your guarantor. Okay? Because the way I presented it is I heard my shofar, I'm good to go, check, I did what God asked me to, I'm finished. What does this say? When I know Mr. Smithstein down the street hasn't heard, I'm his guarantor. If I wasn't guarantor, I still have a stake in that. I'm not. The whole reason this works is that we're invested in one another. We share something. We share an obligation. So at first glance, I thought if I'm exempt from my obligation, but we say even if you're exempt as an individual from your obligation, you're not exempt from your obligation for being a guarantor for the other, and therefore, we're all connected to one another. This is in a very powerful way. Yes.
To this to work, does the community have to have in mind to be Yotzei Mr. Smithstein? Does Mr. Smithstein have to?
He has to hear it. You can't get away out of the action. Okay.
Wow. So
There's
what-
no such thing as you can hear the shofar even though I didn't hear the shofar. Just like I can't say I said Kiddush but I never heard it. There needs to be some physical bond that can enhance me as if I did the act. But there needs to be something visceral. You understand what I'm saying? I can't say the community blew the shofar, so Mr. Smithstein heard the shofar. He didn't
How
hear
do
the
they
shofar.
decide which mitzvahs that works for and which
It
ones they don't?
works for almost all.
Can't do it
mitzvahs.
to filling.
You cannot do it for I'm sorry. It works for the verbalization auditory.
Oh, auditory.
Auditory.
So you would have to go blow the shofar for Mr. Smithstein if he did not hear. Am I understanding this correctly?
Right. It's not just I would have to. It's how does it work?
Mhm.
If I'm done with the answer, you're
You're
not.
obligated to go.
I'm not.
Am I hearing the opposite?
No. The whole point is if I'm exempt, I can't in general. If a person who is exempt from something can't fulfill the obligation of one who's obligated. But this type of exemption, this type of exemption is, I'm exempt because I already did it. But just because I already did it doesn't mean I don't have a stake in this person doing it. Meaning, let me tell you.
You're exempt for yourself.
I'm exempt for myself.
But we're still
what am
worried about
I?
Smithstein.
I'm a guarantor for that person.
So somebody has to.
Somebody has to do that, and they can listen to me because I have a stake. There's that connection is built.
It's a nice, you don't have to do it. I mean, like Rabbi Cohen is an example.
Right.
When he could blow shofar here, he goes to the hospital if somebody's that we know
Oh,
of.
that happened to us.
But he doesn't
in
go to every floor of the hospital.
No, he doesn't have to.
The
But
shofar was
there's
blown for him, but.
But
But
there's-
Hillary, not listening.
but there's
He
a
doesn't have to.
but there's a bond created that they can fulfill even though the person is already.
Huh?
Okay?
Rabbi, wasn't for Mark.
Yes.
There's some mitzvahs that once you, like, for example, Birchas Hamazon, once you say it, you can't say it again. But there are other mitzvahs, like saying the Shema twice. You can say the Shema in the morning, but you
Right,
can say
right.
it every hour.
Right, but I'll give you an example. This happens all the time. I made Havdalah after shul. Then what do? I go home, and guess what I do?
Like for your
I
wife.
made Havdalah for my family.
So, okay.
I already
So
did
you
it.
said God's name again?
Are you accusing me of saying God's name in vain? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah,
I did it. I did it in shul. And now I'm doing it again?
right.
But
But
your
what-
intention was not to include.
No, I said it. I'm the rabbi. I said Havdalah in shul. I said it. You can't take. I can't have intention not to say what I said. Right? I can intention not to listen, but if I say it, there's no such thing. I said Havdalah. And I need to say Havdalah because there are people that are relying on that Havdalah. And then what do I do the second I get home? I make Havdalah for my family.
Because you're the guarantor to your family as well.
Because even though I've already said Havdalah, and as far as me in relation to Shabbat and Havdalah, I've done what I need to do.
So you drove home.
Well, you're always allowed to drive. You're always allowed. Havdalah is always the misnomer. Havdalah does not
In
end
Shabbos.
Shabbos. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to light the
Like
candle.
that's right.
Okay? We mark the end of Shabbos, but it does not end Shabbos. Okay? But why am I doing that? Because even though I still have the obligation, I still am the guarantor. I still have vested interest in my wife and family making Havdalah,
So I
and therefore
have a
that allows me to do it
She could
again.
for herself though, right?
She could.
Nothing prevents a woman from
No,
doing that,
nothing,
right?
right? Some had a cousin that did not, but there's no issue with, but I could also do it, there's not an issue
Right,
with
right.
doing it, okay? It's not that, meaning it proves the point, you don't need to be in a position where it's impossible for the other to do it.
You what? Say it again?
You don't need to be in a position only when it's
Oh.
impossible, this is where it's even possible, and still we say.
I said it.
Okay, but it just, I love this idea of we're so connected to one another that if you haven't fulfilled your mitzvah, and I fulfilled mine, I am lacking.
I had a second question that piggybacks off of the
Okay.
guarantor
But
question.
right, so I'm lacking. And that's what it says actually in Rabbi Nisim 16. As long as your friend has not fulfilled their obligation, Kimisha lo yatso dami, it says if you have not fulfilled your obligation. It's not good enough to walk around and say, I did everything, I'm taken care of. But if you haven't done it, there's something lacking in me or something lacking in
That's
us.
assuming he wants to do it.
Right, I just...
Because you can really, pee off somebody.
Yes, of course, yes, and we need to take it, right.
Oh, you have to go up some guy's
But-
you haven't said Shema today,
But this is, but I'm focusing on the other aspect. It's not a selfish aspect of, look how holy I am, I did this and this. Wow, look, I have an opportunity to help another, and until they have done that, and until Mr. Smithstein has fulfilled the shofar, there's something lacking in
I
my
had a question
shofar.
about that. So if
Yeah.
Smithstein really does want the shofar blown for him, and he's bound at home, and you've already heard the shofar blown, and do you have an avera if you can't get to him? Like if you already
No,
know.
it's not, no, it can't create the degree of that I've done a there or not,
Mhm.
but there's something lacking, there's something spiritually lacking.
Like if you know in your head that he's there,
Yeah, and
he hasn't
it's
had
like,
the shofar blown.
I want
Still
that
hear it.
Mr. Smithstein to hear the shofar.
What does it say in Surah 16? It sort of says if you, it's like.
Kevan shelo yatsa chaver k'mi shelo yatsa hu dami. There's something that you haven't been yotze with if he hasn't been yotze.
And it's like that guilt.
Okay.
Right.
Do we have any other?
And furthermore, just in 17 it says kulam kiguf echad. Why? Because we're like one body. This whole idea of I say it and you listen, because the Jewish people are an entity. It's all this idea of we're one entity, and that's why I can listen to you and you fulfilled it for me. And even if I've already fulfilled it, we can span that area. And it's really based on this Meshech Chachma, which I'll explain outside, which says when the Jewish people received the Torah, it says, and they all answered together as one, we will do. Why was it necessary that the Torah was accepted in this language of we will do with everybody there? Because the Meshech Chachma points out, I love when people say, be a good Jew, keep 613 commandments. What's the problem with that?
You can't
You
slaughter
can't.
cow.
Well, first of all,
Yeah. You know, the temple
I
stuff.
can't be a king and a.
You can't be a king.
Sanhedrin
You can't be a Sanhedrin. Right now we're not in the land of Israel. Some mitzvot relate to men, some relate to women, some relate to a king, some relate to a Sanhedrin, some relate to the temple, some relate to this, some relate to
Some
that.
only very certain circumstances.
Right.
Like there's this one mitzvah to do a blessing that you could only do once every 28 years.
Right? There are certain circumstances, and some mitzvot actually are there when needed, but you don't want to do it. I'll give you an example. There's a mitzvah to give a get.
There's also.
It doesn't mean I've done all the mitzvot in the world and now I have to divorce my wife because there's a mitzvah to give a get. No. It says in the situation when getting divorced, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
But nobody would say, I'm still waiting on that one, okay? It's a circumstantial mitzvah, okay? So that's what 11. Now be a good Jew, 613. It's okay if I leave that one to the side, please? I mean, I believe in it, and that is the procedure done to divorce, but please, I'm happily married, right? And there are many other examples. So it's just, it's an expression, 613, but you don't want to. And it's first, it's not that you want to, it's impossible. So what does he say? The Meshech Chochmah says, why do the Jewish people have to receive it together? They need to receive it together because the only way to receive Torah is as a community. As an individual, we can't receive the whole Torah. We never can. We can only receive the whole Torah as an entire community. And then he explains this idea of we're one body, meaning some people play the roles of the eyes of the Jewish people. Some people play the role of the head. Some people are the arms. I mean, everybody plays a distinct role. Coming together reaches perfection, but nobody can do it alone. The Torah cannot be done alone. And this is why we're always connected to one another. It's not an individual sport, Judaism. And Rabbi Soloveitchik puts it all together here in 19. And he states, the community in Judaism is not a functional utilitarian, but an ontological one. The community is not just an assembly of people who work together for their mutual benefit, but a metaphysical entity, an individuality. I might say a living whole. In particular, Judaism has stressed the wholeness of the unity of Knesset Yisrael, the Jewish community. The latter is not a conglomerate. It is an autonomous entity endowed with a life of its own. We, for instance, lay claim to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. God granted the land to us as a gift. To whom did he pledge the land? Neither to an individual nor to a partnership consisting of millions of people. He gave it to Knesset Yisrael, to the community, as an independent unity, as a distinct juridic metaphysical person. He did not promise the land to me, to you, to them, nor did he promise the land to all of us together. Abraham did not receive the land as an individual, but as a father of a future nation. The owner of the promised land is Knesset Yisrael, which is a community persona. However strange such a concept may appear to the empirical sociologist, it is not at all strange experience for the halachas and the mystic, to whom Knesset Yisrael is a living, loving, and suffering mother. We're more than the sum of our parts, right? We're in a whole, an entity, and that's what he says, and we see how this plays out. Okay, let's jump to, we're going to go towards the end, go to 24. I'm going to share with you one more interesting insight here. Okay, this is one of my favorites, okay, so hold on. So the night of Rosh Hashanah, right? So how do we greet one another? The Shana Tova, Tikatei, Tikatei. Okay, we say, Shana Tova, you should be written and you should be sealed for a good year. After Rosh Hashanah, what is the greeting we were saying to one another? Gemar Chatima Tova.
You should have been sealed on for it. Okay.
Okay. And the first night we say writing and seal. Okay, now listen to this.
What is the last one mean?
Seal.
Seal. And down here we say what?
Seal.
You should be sealed?
Gemar
I thought you
Chatima.
I thought you said the first one you say written and
The
sealed.
first night we say you should be written and sealed.
This time we just say sealed.
Now we should just say seal. Now listen to this. I'm gonna read it in Hebrew and translate. This is
I always say it here.
24. The Levush. This is a commentary on the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch. So he's talking about what happens. He describes like the rituals. So you go to shul and he says, "V'achar kach miftarim lebateim," and then you go home to your houses, l'shalom, in peace. Ve'ein tzarich shuv lomar l'shana tova tikatev. And once you come home that first night, you no longer say Shana Tova Tekatev. You only say it while you're still in shul, and after that you no longer say that. You may say Shana Tova, you may say Gemar Tov, you may say Gemar Chatima Tov. You no longer say Shana Tova. For a good year, it should be written and sealed. Why? Shareu achar ketiva. This is already after the writing. Sheati ketiva hi be'et hatfilah. Actually, this is begimal sha'ot rishonot. And the writing is done. Remember, we spoke about those first 3 hours of the morning. So this is actually talking about when you leave shul after the first day. After you leave the first day, you no longer say you should be written and sealed for a good year. Because when are you already written? You're written after the first 3 hours. After the first 3 rounds, you're already written in your book. V'imhu beinoni taloi ve'omed ad Yom Kippurim. We say if you're in the middle, your judgment is weighted until Yom Kippur, which book you'll be pushed into. You're in the in-between zone. Ve'eno nichtav hayom, and you're not written today. Meaning, okay, meaning, after, right, let me try to think how this goes. This is, okay, I just thought it through. After the first 3 hours of the day, I shouldn't say, you should be written, because what am I assuming? You've already been written. Where have you been written? I'm going to assume in a good book. For me, after the first 3 hours, I say you should be written implies that you are not yet written. Who's not yet written?
The middle guy.
But when I'm looking at you, I should not be looking at you and another and saying you're a middle. What's my assumption?
And there have been written in the good.
Even in the good. So it's almost an act of disrespect to say you should be written, because what am I supposed to be assuming after the first 3 hours?
You were.
You've already been written. Okay? So that's why we only have the custom the first night to say you should be written, because afterwards when I look at you, I'm assuming you're already written. But then he says, hold on. What about all the prayers that talk about writing that we've been saying throughout this week? Why do we keep saying write us in the good book? That's all the prayers this week are about writing. So what does he say? Well, when I'm praying, who am I worried about? Myself. But if I'm wishing you a Shana Tova, how dare I assume that you are in the middle? Myself, we all have to assume we're in the middle, and we're using this week to get written for good. But when I look at another individual, what do I see? That's tzaddik. That's tzaddik. And I think this is a key. How do you look at others? And I think it's the opposite of the way most people do. Most people in this world, when they think about themselves, I'm pretty good. And no, it's not that as much. Everybody's very good at criticizing another's faults, right? Our own, we have all our defenses that we put up, and
Like Obama.
Okay, I'm not going to stay out of politics, but okay, right? We're very good.
It was Clapper's fault.
Right. In general, it's very good to look and that this person does this wrong, this person does this, he was doing this. But self-judgment is actually a lot harder. This saying, on Rosh Hashanah, when I look at another, what do I need to see? I need to see good. Where do I need to see fault? Myself, you know? If we would all spend as much time, either as individuals or as organizations, worrying about our own problems and not telling everybody else what they're doing wrong, we'd be a much better people.
So let me ask something.
Yeah.
So I always got this kind of confused after all these years of just fasting for what, but the 10 days, the day of judgment is Rosh Hashanah, no?
Day of judgment is Rosh Hashanah, right.
Right. So what you're saying is we're supposed to assume ourselves as being in the middle.
Right.
And we have those 10 days to get to when at Nila, if we've done enough Teshuva,
Right.
we're going to get
Correct.
sealed in the good book.
Correct.
And that's the Day of Atonement, which puts you back into the Day of Judgment.
Correct. The basic way it's presented is where the judgment is on Rosh Hashanah, and there's the three groups: Rasha, evil; Tzaddik, righteous; and Beinoni, in between. So where do we need to view ourselves? Hopefully we're not evil. So where do we view ourselves? And you think about most people, we're not evil. I wouldn't say, usually tzaddik is not somebody who thinks they're a tzaddik. It's like, right. So where do we see ourselves? We don't know for sure. So we see ourselves as Beinoni. So what's our job? Is to try to use this time to move from here to the tzaddik. But what this piece is saying is that what our work during this time is, when we're focusing on faults, our own. But when I see another, I see good. And that's what it's saying.
Do you have a second to talk about the annulling of vows? I don't understand that one.
Could in a second, but let me just take this question, yes.
Okay, I love it, but I'm confused.
Okay.
Because we talked about already how we're saying custody new and like us. So we're saying I can't look at you and say be sealed, but I mean say be written, but I can say about myself I want to be written, but then I'm saying we want to be written, so I'm saying but really I think everybody else is Beinoni too. But like,
truth is, I share your question, and
Okay.
I don't have a good answer to it.
Okay.
But it's an excellent question, because we for the earlier source we're saying how this is all plural. Now you're saying it's plural, but this is more an individual. So we probably make a distinction, because there's I would say the distinction is this: if I'm talking to you and I'm saying you should be written, and after it's already been decided, then I'm saying to you, you're not a tzaddik. In prayer, and I'm talking about in general, we should all be written. So that's much more broad. You understand? I'm not like looking at an individual saying, not all of us are yet there, so I can say that me and those that are not. But if I'm looking at you, that could be an insult. And my sensitivity should be, when I'm looking at an individual, you understand, I'm focusing usually for the point, right? It's a good point here. I'd see it's a take it. Because that's what I should see.
She is.
We say
Is that?
yes, that does answer.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
we say Gemara Chasima Tova after Rosh Hashanah to everybody, right? That's not.
Right, but Chasima is not the.
You should not say that.
No, but no, Gemara Chasima Tova, it's the writing.
Oh, you should not say that then.
No. It's the. No, Chasima is the sealing.
Right, yes, that's okay.
So that's not a problem.
Yeah, okay.
To say somebody now, we don't say at this point Ketiva v'Chatima Tova anymore, because we want to say
You've been there.
you're already written. Now, when I go into my, I'm not sure about myself, but who am I to say that you are? Right? That's the distinction. So I think that's another element of when community focuses. Let's see the good in others, not just the power that we have being with others, but let's see the good in others. And let's just conclude with one last piece of Rabbi Soloveitchik. It emerges from this faith. In the coming of the Messiah is dependent upon our faith in Knesset Yisrael. Right? We often talk about faith in God, which is very important to the Torah. Faith and belief. What is this? What is he talking about? Faith and Jewish people. That's a form. You rarely hear such a term. Faith in our people. If we allow this faith to waver, then our entire faith in the coming of the Messiah is undermined. The Jew who believes in Knesset Yisrael is the Jew who lives as part of it wherever it is and is willing to give his life for it, feels its pain, rejoices with it, fights in its wars, groans at its defeats, and celebrates its victories. The Jew who believes in Knesset Yisrael is a Jew who bonds not only to the people of Israel on his own generation, but the community of Israel throughout the ages. How so? Through the Torah, which embodies the spirit and the destiny of Israel from generation unto eternity. And I think I was thinking about this, reading this. This was a terrible, painful summer. But what we call a chatzi nechama, a partial comfort in all the atrocities of the summer. The three boys, Gilad, Ayal, and Naphtali, and then the wonderful Jewish soldiers who lost their lives. And what a painful time that was. but for the first time in many years, you felt the pulse of the Jewish people beating as a whole, as an entity, as if people came together from all stripes and all walks of life to fight. We did what we could over here. The people, you just felt the Jewish people was coming together as one, and that's what he's saying, and that is the strongest strength of our people is when we're able to come together as one. And hopefully we don't come together just in times of difficulty, but times of celebration, that we can celebrate one another. We can realize the strength that we have as a community. We can see the good in others and not just the bad in others, which is the way it normally is. And each community, and hopefully my community and your community, we're really part of the same goal, part of the same thing, and we should use that energy. And when we stand there asking for forgiveness on Yom Kippur, yes, so with a little trepidation, but also with confidence that if we stand amongst our beloved community, we believe God will hear our prayers and answer us for a good year filled with health, happiness, blessing, and all good things for Jewish people.